Hello, welcome to Never Mind The Ballots. I'm Harry Cole. With Donald Trump offering to do Putin a very big favour by ending the war in Ukraine and slapping him with even more sanctions and taxes if he doesn't come to the table, are we finally on the cusp of peace talks? But at what price? Joining me today is a man that knows a thing or two about taking on the Kremlin, businessman, campaigner and Putin enemy, Bill Browder. Morning, Bill. With the new White House saying Zelensky has to be realistic about Ukraine giving up land and it all going a bit quiet about Ukraine joining NATO, this is shaping up to be a forced surrender, isn't it?
Well, first of all, I think that what you started with is the most important point, which is that Putin has been basically unwilling to negotiate anything, and that's the big uncertainty in this whole thing. You know, Trump said he wanted to end this war in 24 hours. Zelensky showed up in Paris when they went at the Notre Dame Cathedral and met with Trump. He told Trump he's ready to negotiate, and now all of a sudden all eyes are on Putin. And what's Putin going to do? And I think what Trump is sensing, and this is something that I've seen for a long time, is that Putin doesn't negotiate. Putin doesn't. I've been in conflict with Putin for 15 years. He never compromises. He never negotiates. He never backs down. And so I think that we're in for a difficult ride, not because of Trump, not because of Zelensky, but because of Putin.
You've said you're at Davos, and I've read a quote from you this morning, a very good quote, actually, that we're playing fantasy football with Putin, and we just don't know what price he would accept. And actually, everything offered so far is nowhere near that. I think what was your quote? We're smoking dope if we think Putin's going to accept anything that's being cooked up until now.
Yeah.
So are we just going to end up with sort of a sham talks, basically like we saw early on in the war, or how are we going to bring him to the table?
Well, so what you need to understand is that the reason Putin went into this war in the first place is not because of NATO. It's not because of some land ambitions. He went into this war in order to have a foreign enemy so people weren't mad at him. This is sort of classic Machiavelli 101. Find an enemy, a foreign enemy, start a war so people don't get mad at you as the dictator. And that's why Putin went into Ukraine. And of course, it's not gone well for him. But at every step of the way, he just doubles down and keeps on escalating. And so there's nothing that Trump can offer him that serves his interest, because his interest is staying in power in order to stay alive, and that's what this war is doing for him. And so I don't. The only thing that Trump could offer him is a total capitulation of Ukraine, but that's not in Trump's interest. That would be worse than Biden withdrawing from Afghanistan. I mean, can you imagine the disaster if Trump handed Putin Ukraine?
We'll get on to Trump in a moment. Let's just stick with Putin, though. This war, I mean, Trump basically appears to have walked out of a security briefing and with the freshest numbers that we've heard in a while about Russia's losses in this war. 1 million men, wounded or killed, up nearly 1 million men. That is not sustainable for Putin. We used to talk, we used to hear politicians talk about Putin must fail. That's gone a bit quiet now. How long do you think he actually can sustain this war with an increasingly hostile public back at home and, frankly, an economy in the toilet?
Well, those are all true things you've just said, but the answer is, how many people did Stalin lose in the Second World War? Like, tens of millions. And so if Putin's lost 1 million, he could lose 5 million. Putin doesn't care. The guy's a sociopath at best, a psychopath more likely. He doesn't care how many people he loses. He's a dictator. He doesn't care about any cost. All he wants is to be on top, the strong man, the winner of this whole thing. And so I wouldn't look at these losses and say, oh my God, he's ready to do a deal. He's not ready to do a deal. He sees himself as the winner in this whole situation. He thinks he has the upper hand. And by the way, all this talk about doing a deal just makes him feel even more emboldened. The only deal that he's going to do is a deal that he has to do. And the only way we're going to make him do a deal is if the Ukrainians are in a strong position. And we're not going to put the Ukrainians in a strong position by demanding that they give up land and make all these concessions. We put them in a strong position by giving them the weapons they need so they can cause real trouble for the Russians, and giving them and putting sanctions on Russia so Putin doesn't have the money. And until we do all that kind of stuff, we're going to be in the same situation.
The mood music we're hearing out of the new White House is a slightly harder tone on Putin than perhaps Donald Trump on the campaign trail and Donald Trump in his first initiation in the White House. He's not going to want to, you rightly sort of say he doesn't have the political capital, I don't think, to spend the first 2 years of his second presidency being accused of being a Putin puppet. Do you believe Trump when he says he's going to slap further sanctions? I'm not quite sure what tariffs he's going to put on Russia, given most Russian exports are already banned in the United States. But, he is making the right noises, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I was delighted with those noises, a hell of a lot better than the alternative noises. And so, everything that I've seen out of Trump in the last 48 hours suggests that he now recognizes the reality. He said that, Putin he said Zelensky is ready to negotiate. But he doesn't know if Putin's going to negotiate. And then he went on to say Putin has got all these problems with these loss of soldiers and his economy. And then, of course, he went on to say that if Putin doesn't negotiate, then he's going to slap all these sanctions and tariffs and taxes on Putin, which is the kind of thing I would want him to say. And so I'm happy to see that he's taken a hard line with Putin. The real problem comes later on, because the one type of deal that Putin could do is what I call a fake deal. And what I mean by that is that Putin will agree to something or agree to some process or negotiation in exchange for a ceasefire or sanctions relief with only one purpose, which is just to rearm and regroup before he makes another attempt at Ukraine. And I very much hope that Trump is not fooled by any fake deal that Putin wants to offer, because that would be unacceptable to America, to Europe, and to Ukraine, most importantly.
Yeah, I was in Kyiv last week, and Zelensky said very clearly we need peace, not a pause. But he also said that will only come with NATO membership or equivalent guarantees from the West. I think that's where it's got a bit quiet of late. It used to be, Ukraine must and can join NATO, like a host of other former Soviet states. But it's got a bit soft, I think, since then, the language around it. Do you think there's any way of stopping, keeping the peace without those security guarantees? And do you think the will is there in the West to do it?
Well, so first of all, let's just back up. Putin invaded Ukraine. He continues to invade Ukraine. The war is raging. Thousands of soldiers are dying every week on both sides, and that's what's going on right now. And there's no sign of that stopping. And so, so we're in the middle of a war, and I think that's what Trump is finally realizing, that this thing is not going to end in 24 hours. It went from 24 hours to 100 days, and I think that it's going to go well beyond 100 days, because each side has its own very strong reasons for being at war. Putin's reason is that he needs a war to stay in power, and he understands if he loses power, he dies. And the Ukrainians are at war because if the Russians take over Ukraine, all the women get raped, all the men have their hands tied behind their backs before they're shot in the head and then buried in shallow graves, and all the children get kidnapped. And so the Ukrainians have a pretty good reason to continue fighting. And so, that's where we are right now. And how do you stop that? I think that there's only one way to stop that when it comes to Putin, which is for the Ukrainians to be victorious. How do you make them victorious? You give them the means to fight back. And the last administration, the Biden administration, gave them enough weaponry so they didn't lose, but they didn't give them enough weaponry so they won. And so I would hope that when Trump realizes that Putin is unwilling to negotiate on any terms, he'll give the Ukrainians double down, triple down, so that they can actually fight this war properly, because they haven't been able to up until this point.
First page of The Art of the Deal says you must negotiate from a position of strength, throw lots of different options out there to confuse your enemies, and see which ones land. Do you think that's what we're seeing from the president here? He's sort of probing and testing the water.
Well, he's going straight from The Art of the Deal. The problem is that in order to do a deal, each side needs to give something up, and Putin's not ready to give up anything. And so that's the unfortunate part. If you read Putin's version of The Art of the Deal, there is no deal. The deal is, total subjugation of everybody around him.
You've seen him and his goons, how they behave at the thick end of it. Do you think Donald Trump's got the steel to do it, or do you think he'll get bored and, get bogged down in domestic affairs and potentially just walk away? That's what the concern seems to be in Ukraine.
Well, I don't think there's any opportunity to walk away from this. I mean, everybody is involved in a very, very profound way. And so I think that Trump probably will get frustrated with the situation, but being frustrated just means that it drags on. I mean, the war has not just been going on since 2022. This war started in 2014. It's been going on for a long time, and I sadly and tragically suspect it's going to be going on for a long time going forward. I hope that Trump will do the right thing and stand by the Ukrainians, who are heroes and brave defenders of freedom. And I think that the last 48 hours suggests that he's now, moving in that direction. But, only time will tell.
We can but hope. Final question, Bill Browder. You're at Davos, I think. What's the global elite's view on this? Are they war-weary? Are they hoping to get Russian sanctions moved on to get back in there? What's the sort of consensus at Davos?
Well, I was at a breakfast this morning, a Ukraine breakfast, where there was, I think, 7 heads of state from European countries, and everybody is ready to do what it takes for Ukraine to win. And so we're all eyes are on Washington right now to make sure that there's no change in the U.S. policy towards this thing. And of course, everyone's worried about a change in policy because there's been, confusing noises coming out of the campaign. But, everyone is cautiously optimistic that America will continue to support Ukraine in the way that it has before.
We can but hope. I think Congress might have something to say about that. But let's see how it plays out. Bill Browder from Davos, thank you very much for joining us, and Never Mind the Ballots.